Hey everyone, this is Andy from Giz China, and today we're looking at two of the most popular mid-range flagship phones from China. On the left we have the iOcean MT6752 Rock, and on the right we have the JiaYu S3. Now if you've been considering either of these phones, you will have noticed that a lot of the specifications are the same. Both phone has a 5.5-inch Full HD 1920 by 1080 display. And both phones come with the octa-core MediaTek MT6752 chipset. Now that chipset has been a huge deal for Chinese phone makers this year. Obviously iOcean and JiaYu use it, but also Meizu and Elephone will use this processor too. The reason it's a big deal is it's a new 64-bit architecture processor with native LTE support and a slightly faster GPU. It also brings better GPS performance than before, and altogether that makes a better, more usable, faster phone than before. And surprisingly, the new MediaTek chip is more powerful than the Qualcomm Snapdragon 615. So if you do opt for either the iOcean or the JiaYu S3, you shouldn't really need to worry about performance. The processor in both of these phones is really remarkable and a great buy at these prices. Another great feature for performance is the amount of RAM. The iOcean MT6752 Rock comes with 3GB of RAM as standard. Now that's a huge amount of RAM for an Android phone. You know, only a few years ago that's as much as we were using in PCs, but now we've got it in our smartphone. The JiaYu S3 comes with either 2GB of RAM or 3GB of RAM. And for our test we've been using the 2GB RAM version, and in all honesty, performance is very similar between both of these phones, even with the extra gigabyte of RAM on the iOcean. That said, if you do tend to use a lot of social networking apps and you've got a lot of stuff running in the background, the extra gigabyte of RAM doesn't harm the performance at all. So although we've got a lot of similarities between both of these phones, there are some differences. From the front, physically, they are different in the fact that the JiaYu S3 has navigation controls along the bottom and very narrow bezels. In fact, the JiaYu S3 looks more of a traditional Android flagship smartphone. Got an all black front, capacitive buttons along the chin, narrow bezels, got the volume and power button on the right hand side. Now the iOcean is a little bit different. We've got a slightly longer design, slightly wider design, and instead of capacitive buttons along the chin, we've got on-screen controls. Now, iOcean say that the reason they've gone for on-screen controls and kept this large chin is the fact that the antenna in the rear takes up a lot of space. And also, they wanted to leave the chin area for when people use the iOcean Rock in landscape mode. They've still got somewhere to hold it and not interfere with the actual usage of the phone. There's no worry of touching any buttons while you're holding it in landscape mode. That's something that you tend to learn to live with. If you're used to a phone with capacitive buttons along the bottom, you're probably already used to using your device without hitting the buttons. But that said, I have used phones in the past, for example the Huawei Honor 6 Plus and the iUni U3, which do have smaller chins and on-screen controls, and it is quite nice to have this extra area to hold the iOcean in landscape mode. If we turn both of these phones over, take a look at a few more of the differences. As you can see, design-wise they're very different from each other. Again, JiaYu have gone for a more traditional-looking Android phone. It actually looks very similar to the Oppo Find 7 or even the OnePlus One. It's not a copy obviously, but it's very, very similar. We've got a dual LED flash below, a 13-megapixel Sony IMX214 sensor. We've got the JiaYu logo, and we've got this large grille, and behind there we do actually have two speakers. The iOcean, we've got a totally different design. We've got this camera that sits away from the body. It's actually a 14-megapixel camera. Got a single LED flash. The iOcean logo is in the middle. Again, we've got space for two speakers there, and underneath here we actually do have two speakers. And the finish of the phone is a mottled finish. I'm not sure you can see it very well on the video, but the reason why this is called the Rock is basically because they've given it a rock or stone finish. It's a little bit rough, it's a little bit mottled, and you can see grey and white texture around here. Very interesting look. It's not to everyone's, not everyone enjoys or appreciates the look of the iOcean Rock. but it is certainly something that is very, very different. Okay, while we've got the phones turned over, let's take a look at what's inside. The JiaYu S3 has this really easy area here. We can pop our fingernail in and pop the rear off. And inside you can see we've got a 3000 mAh battery. 3000 mAh for a 5.5 Full HD phone with a 64-bit octa-core processor and up to 3 GB of RAM is about spot on. For example, the Oppo Find 7 has a similar size battery, and other flagship phones also have a similar size battery. So JiaYu have gone for a good size battery. We've got space for a micro SD card there, and also dual SIMs. Now, both of these SIMs will accept an LTE card, but not at the same time. Once you've chosen which of these SIM areas will be your LTE, the other will divert to 3G. That's the same with the iOcean as well. I'm not sure if you can make it out on the video, but we do have space there for the 2 speakers. I'll just bring that further up. You can just about make it out. We've got speakers either side. Really well made. Even on the inside, the JiaYu S3 looks really, really well finished. And I especially like these 3D printed antennas at the top. Very, very smooth and flat, hardly take up any room at all. And in use they offer really, really good support for GPS, really good performance, LTE, 4G, all of that. It's very, very good on the JiaYu S3. Okay, now if we open up the iOcean to compare, again we've got this small area here for our thumbnail to pop in and pull the rear off. And there we go, this is the inside of the iOcean MT6752 Rock. In this case we've got a 2300 mAh battery. Now that is it's a bit of an interesting decision by iOcean. In all honesty, we should be expecting around a 3000 mAh battery in here. So a 2300 mAh is a little on the downside. We do, however, still get the micro SD. We've got dual SIM, dual speakers, and you can see we've got antennas here, here, and along the bottom. And like I say, one of the reasons that iOcean kept this large chin is because this antenna sits behind it. Okay, let's put the covers back on and turn them over. Look at some other features before we take a look at the ROMs. Okay, JiaYu S3, really comfy in your hand. It's a narrow phone. We've got these power button here and a volume rocker on the right hand side. So if you hold it with your right hand, you can easily get those with your thumb or the index finger with your left hand. Very, very comfortable and smooth phone to hold. Feels very good. And, looks a little bit like the Oppo Find 7, feels a bit like the Oppo Find 7 too. The iOcean MT6752 Rock is a little bit wider, it's a little bit longer, but this more curved area here on the corner is very, very comfortable in your hand, and that mottled rock finish actually adds a little bit of grip and texture. It's a very, very comfortable phone in your hand. The button controls, they're slightly further down if we compare that to the JiaYu S3. If we put them next to each other, you can see that the buttons are larger on the iOcean and they're slightly further down. And personally I prefer a bit of a higher power and volume rocker because I'm tending to hold the phone further down here. It's just something you just learn to live with when you're using it. And it's personal preference really. Personally I prefer the power button and volume rocker here rather than further down, but in actual use they're both quite comfortable and you get used to both of them anyway. Okay, one final detail before we take a look at the ROMs. The dimensions of the JiaYu S3, a 152 by 75.5 with a thickness of 8.9 millimeters, whereas the iOcean MT6752 is 154 76.9 by 8.2 millimeters. So the JiaYu is shorter and narrower, but a little bit thicker because of that 3000 mAh battery. The iOcean is longer, wider, and thinner because of that slightly smaller 2300 mAh battery. Okay, let's take a look at the ROMs on both phones. So this is the lock screen on both phones. On the iOcean we've got this little ring and it's a little bit like MIUI. We've only got the an unlock button here, but you'll be able to switch on a shortcut for a camera or different things. So we just unlock the phone like that, like so. The iOcean has a different lock screen. Basically, we slide anywhere on here, and we've got a different animation. You can see it pops up a little bit like a wave. So once on, you can see that the design, the style of both ROMs is very, very different. The JiaYu S3 is a very clean, it looks very professional looking ROM. We've got these nice ColorOS style icons. And in fact, actually the whole ROM is very, very similar to ColorOS from Oppo. The iOcean, we've got slightly different icons. They look a little bit more like MIUI. With the background, it looks a little bit cluttered. And we can see that we've got these on-screen controls here. We've got the option, home and back button there. That basically means that these icons are further up than they are on the JiaYu S3. And it does give the impression of a larger screen on the JiaYu S3, although physically they're the same. Swiping down from the top on both phones brings you up to the notification area. Obviously you have no notifications in there. Swiping to the left brings up the toggles. We've got area here to change the brightness on both. And we've also got our most popular toggles in there. Wi-Fi, battery percentage, airplane mode, etc. Just tapping this will take us back to our notifications or into our quick settings again. And swiping up will take you back to the home screen. So it's all basic standard stuff. If going through the ROM on both, you can see that both iOcean and JiaYu have been inspired by ColorOS. If we swipe to the left, you can see both of these phones come with a very similar music widget, and this allows you to play music directly from your home screen. Another swipe will bring you to a camera widget, and again we find this in ColorOS. You can take photos directly from the home screen without going into the camera application. So a lot of inspiration from ColorOS. What I really like from both ROM is the fact that our search bar remains at the top, so it doesn't matter where we are on the home screen, we can get to our Google search and search for applications in the phone really, really quickly. If we take a look at settings on both phones, you can see that the style of the settings is very different. Again, we can see a little bit more on the JiaYu S3 because we don't have these on-screen controls, and the iOcean has this black bar along the bottom where our controls are. We've got the option of either quick settings on both or general settings, and you can see again this is very, very much like ColorOS on the JiaYu S3. We've got a black and green look with green switches. It looks like it's basically been lifted from an Oppo phone, whereas the ROM on the iOcean is a little bit more cartoonish, a little bit more like MIUI. Settings, we have very, very similar details on both. One feature that the iOcean offers that the JiaYu doesn't is Hotnot, and basically Hotnot is MediaTek's version of NFC. Personally, it's not something that I ever use because it requires another Hotnot device, but I don't really use NFC that much either. If we go down into the settings a little bit further, you can see that both phones come with a smart wake setting. Turning it on will allow you to double click to wake the screen, draw up to unlock, and in fact if you go through these settings, they're the same on each. They've both got exactly the same quick wake settings. Hitting back on both will take you back to the menu area. We have gesture sensing as well on the on the JiaYu, whereas gesture setting is not available on the iOcean ROM. But both of these phones are getting OTA updates, so extra features are coming to both of these phones. To be honest, I really do love the look of the ROM on the JiaYu S3, and I'm really impressed by the features of the ROM on the iOcean, although the actual look of the ROM isn't quite to my tastes. Both of these phones are really very, very good. They both offer great performance. They're both great value for money. You can pick both of them up for around $200 or 200 euros, depending on where you are. Performance-wise, very, very similar. I think JiaYu have got their ROM a little bit better tweaked, so you're getting a bit better performance from here. But in actual, when you're actually using the phone, gaming, or day-to-day use, there is very, very similar performance. You don't really notice the difference from phone to phone. Basically, it comes down to personal preference. Which do you prefer? Do you prefer the cleaner, more simple look of the JiaYu S3 and the ColorOS ROM and the larger battery, or do you prefer the more quirky design of the iOcean ROC with the rock texture and the on-screen controls? Again, personally, I do prefer the look and the feel of the JiaYu. I also prefer the camera of the JiaYu too. The iOcean camera needs a little bit of work. But if you are looking for a powerful phone, a 64-bit MediaTek octa-core phone with LTE support, a lot of RAM, and some great features and beautiful screen, both of these phones could be ones to look at. Both of these phones are available online now, internationally, and I couldn't highly recommend them anymore. They're both fantastic devices. So that's it for now. That's it. That's the comparison between the iOcean MT6752 and the JiaYu S3. Let us know which you prefer in the details below, in the comments below. And also let us know if you have the iOcean or the JiaYu. Which do you prefer? What do you like? What don't you like? Please let us know. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video and it wasn't too long, and I'll speak to you all soon.